Let's talk a little NFL. Everybody wants to talk about the quarterbacks, but the hidden gem to Super Bowls, the hidden gem to winning is actually what happens at the wide receiver group. Think about it historically. That team that has two great wide receivers, whether Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp, whether Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill back in the day, those teams that have those two dudes that can catch the ball, yeah, those are the teams that win. So we're going to talk you through the top 5 receiving duos in the National Football League. At number 5, this one was the toughest one for me. DK Metcalf-Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks. DK Metcalf, he's that big body receiver, 6'3", 235 pounds, runs a 4.4. Tyler Lockett is the burner on the back end. He helps get things done. At number 4, it's a new one. CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks. We know how good CeeDee Lamb is, all-pro. That's very hard to do. But Brandon Cooks, I will continue to remind you all, he's had 6 1,000-yard receiving seasons, and he's had 3 different quarterbacks over the course of it. So Brandon Cooks helps aid CeeDee Lamb. They're at number 4 in the top 5 receiving duos. At number 3, A.J. Brown-DeVonta Smith. A.J. Brown, you know what he is, an absolute beast. Last year, all-pro wide receiver. DeVonta Smith, he won the Heisman in college as a wide receiver, bona fide beast out there, former first-round pick. At number 2, Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. Now, those dudes are both bad dudes, 6'4" wide receivers, 6'3" wide receivers, and what they can do with the ball after they catch it, it's what separates them, but that's what separates my number 1. Jaylen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, because when you talk about yak yards, beast, 1,300 yards for Jaylen Waddle, even more for Tyreek Hill. They are the best wide receiving duo in all of the National Football League. But I got to head to the desk and see if there is anybody that I missed. Shady, you played with some great duos. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, whoever you want to say. Deshaun Jackson, Jeremy Maclin. You know what it takes to watch and play with a great receiving duo. Who has the best wide receiving duo?
I want to go with the Philadelphia Eagles, but then I thought about it. That's a great tandem. I got to go with Dolphins, right? Waddle and Tyreek Hill, like them guys together. All that speed is so hard to cover. And not only just the speed part, but they got, like, true number 1 talent on both sides, right? Jaylen Waddle could be a number 1 on a lot of different teams. Then you add in Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill hasn't had a bad year in the last, 7, 8 years? He's productive all the time. There was a period of time where I thought that Tua was just regular quarterback. He won't last long, right? That's how it was going. It was okay. His team kept trying to replace him. And then Tyreek Hill comes to the picture, right? And you see the difference. Him and Waddle together, 1,300 yards and then 1,700 yards on offense. When you do that with the wide receivers, you can get anything you want. You can run the ball, you can play action, you get the tight ends over the top. Whatever you want to do, you can do. You got wide receivers like that. So my tandem, I had to go with them too.
All of these receiving duos are really good. You could argue they're all elite. What to you is a separating factor between Hill and Waddle and, say, Ja'Marr Chase and T, or Hill and Waddle and DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown? They are all elite, but what is that small gap for you?
I just think it's the number 1 wide receivers on both sides, right? You look to the left, you got Hill. You look to the right, you got Waddle. Then I look at the things you could do with them. Everybody talks about the speed. They doing more than that, though. They doing underneath routes that's you throwing for 10 yards that's going 85 for a touchdown. They throwing over the top, deep routes. They doing screens. They doing handoffs. They can do everything in this offense. And I just think that when I watch them play, they scare you. Where other teams, the number 1's going to really scare you, right? And the number 2 was just really good. We got to watch him. Where both of these guys, they scare you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Slick, where do you land on this one? Top receiving duos. You watch a lot of Bengals ball, but you watch a lot of NFL ball.
Yeah, man. I wrestled with this so much because if you look at the top 3 that you put up there, they really are different in a lot of ways. But my biggest wrestle was with the Philadelphia Eagles combo and the Bengals combo. And I will admit, I didn't want to go with the Bengals because I don't want to look like a homer. But also because I don't know how much to weigh Joe Burrow's ability into how good they are and his relationship with Ja'Marr Chase. Not to take anything away from those guys as receivers. But the reason that I ultimately went with the Eagles over those two is because the number 1 thing for me with receivers is I want to know that if you're open and I throw you the ball, you're going to catch it. And for Waddle and Hill, there's too many drops. I get you in terms of how scary they are and how they open up everything else for everybody else. But the precision of the routes and your ability to catch the ball along with that speed and maybe the size too.
Yep, that matters.
Right? You have A.J. Brown, you have T. Higgins, you have that element. And if we're talking about a duo and what they present as a combo, I'm going to go with the Eagles first, and I would probably go with the Bengals second, and I would go with the Dolphins third.
Fair. Joy, where you stand? She's waddling.
No, we like stats around here, Shady. I mean, Hill and Waddle have the most receiving yards of any wide receiver duo in 2022. They had almost 400 more yards than the closest tandem, which was A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. And they did that with 4 regular season games and 1 playoff game without Tua. That's crazy. That's really, really crazy. There are some stats that we throw out there that, like, don't really have a lot of meat to them. That one does to me, because we're talking about this duo, kind of isolated from who's throwing to them, right? Like, we're not really measuring. All these guys obviously have decent quarterbacks because someone has to get the ball to them. But they would do this with pretty much any quarterback. And that speaks to them. And that's nothing against Tua. It's just that they had these numbers and Tua was injured. So that shows you how elite they are. And I think sometimes when it comes to Tyreek, you want, like, the big go up and grab it. You want the long receiver. Like, he just does all of that, and he doesn't need to be that size. I mean, it's just elite that you can't duplicate.
Shady, when I was looking at this list, I said to myself, they all have maybe top 10 quarterbacks. Now I was wondering, is it the receiver in your mind that's making the quarterback, or do you think it's the quarterback that's making the receiver? Because I don't think it's coincidence, right? You think about Joe Burrow. He's there with Jamar Chase and with T. Higgins. You think about Tua Tagovailoa there with Waddle, et cetera. Is it the receivers helping the quarterbacks more, or the quarterbacks helping the receivers?
I think they're helping each other out. I mean, for me to say that, Burrow's making Jamar Chase, that's crazy, right? I think it's a mixture of both of them. I think it's only one real quarterback I feel like that can play with just anybody, and that's Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. He's in the category with himself. Because I don't know how great Joe Burrow will be without Jamar Chase.
Haven't seen it, college or pro.
And you know what? I don't want to find that out. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love when I watch the Bengals and I watch Joe Burrow throwing bombs to Jamar Chase. I love to see that. And I don't want to even break that down to see what would Jamar will be without him and without. Yeah, I don't even want to see that.
Yeah.
Fair.
Well, are you talking about your list or our list?
Who's in your top 5 then? I was talking about.
No, I'm talking about, like, as far as quarterbacks go, because CeeDee Lamb and Cooks are at 4.
Yep, they got Dak. He's a top 10 quarterback.
Oh. And Metcalf and Lockett?
Geno Smith coming off a Pro Bowl season. I would have said that's why the question to me is so fascinating. Coming off that Pro Bowl season, now that we have to kick guys like Kyler Murray out of the top 10, you got to kick guys like Russell Wilson out of the top 10. I think.
I need to do some counting first. But I do think it's a dependent position. Somebody has to get you the ball. And it obviously makes your life harder if you're not playing with a top quarterback. I mean, D-Hop is out there right now. We're going to get to see what he's like with a different quarterback than he was with over the past season. And it could look different. Like, you could be so skilled that the quarterback is holding you back, and we can see that. But yeah, I'm going to have to do some counting before we...
No, it's just fascinating, because I'm like...
Well, it's fascinating coming into the season. I'm looking at the Chargers and what they have. Yeah. I'm looking at the fact that arguably the top 2 wide receivers in the game are not listed in our duos with Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams. And if just one guy comes along with one of those guys... And
Stephon Diggs.
And to be totally transparent, like... You're right. There is probably something about Tyreek Hill looking so different than your classic wide receiver and what they look like, because his speed and his size, it's just, he looks so different. That's where it's hard for me with, I think Waddle and Hill are very similar, and they look the same to me, and they look different than what I think of when I think of a classic all-time wide receiver.
See, and I think that's the issue with, like, the traditional wide receiver or player. Like Antonio Brown, we used to always argue this all the time. And people would say, oh, I'm taking Julio, no doubt. And I'm thinking, like, well, Julio's a great player. Like, yes, if you take AB or take Julio, it's great picks. But why are you going with Julio? And you would think it would be like, oh, he's fast and he got his routes or his stats. They go to straight to his size.
Yeah.
Bigger.
And I'm like, you're going to his size, but if you look at Antonio Brown, like, he's smaller. He's just as productive or even more.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? Yep. So I just feel like when we watch these players, no matter if it's even wide receiver, whatever position is, it's like we in the back of our mind we go to the traditional style.
Correct.
Same thing with the quarterbacks of the scramblers compared to the guys in the pocket.
Great point.
You know what I'm saying?
Great point. It is fascinating. And talking to a head coach currently, it's all about who do you prefer to defend.
Right.
Some people prefer to defend Tyreek Hill because you know exactly where he lines up. You know what route he's going to run. Some people would rather not defend Jamar Chase because it doesn't matter where he lines up. He can give you a go. He can give you a post. All these receivers will have productive seasons, and you can count on their teams doing so as well.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.